voices blending, melodies ascending, harmony in the air. Our songs are never ending. In the barbershop we create magic. Brad and John show, yeah, it's pure classic. No instruments needed, just our vocal range. Notes flying high, it's our musical exchange. Tracy's station may try, but they can't compete. Our barbershop style, it can't be beat. Oh, the harmony of voices, so sweet. In the barbershop of life, our tunes will repeat. No need for instruments, no need for a band. Just the Brad and John show, the finest in the land.
Ah, yes, John. We made someone happy for 2 weeks in a row, didn't we?
Well, boy, that's a first for us, isn't it, Brad?
You could say that again. That is John Combest. You spell his last name Combest. He's an interesting guy for 23 plus years, every single day, never missed a day. I don't care if it's Christmas, New Year's. I don't care if it's John's hungover from the night before. John gets up early, puts together a list of all the important things you should know about that's going on in the state of Missouri, public-wise, politics, government, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes goofy stories. Sometimes the government stories are goofy, but that's a whole other story. And he puts it together, and we count down the top three. But on Friday, we've gone back to this again, we have a special intro for John, which is
time for the John Combest Top 3.
the Combest Top 3. Not just the Combest Top 3, but the Combest Top 3. John, can you live up to that billing?
I think I can, Brad. I mean, you teased that sometimes government stories are just silly, and I got one for you.
Well, let's start, and we start with this guy right here. And what's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey.
And we start off with?
In third place,
An inspirational story, Brad, that will inspire you to hop in your car today, maybe drive to Topgolf, maybe go to the Valley, go to Topgolf, maybe go to Marcus Theaters, maybe swing by Schnucks. Yes, St. Louis Public Schools have suspended their credit cards after spending more than $1.6 million. This story brought to us by Blythe Bernard from the Post-Dispatch. Brad, I can hardly speak. I'm so giddy because this list is a smorgasbord of what school district employees use their brand spanking new credit cards for. Did you catch up on any of this news yesterday, Brad?
Well, I heard this and it reminded me. We talked about was Monday or Tuesday when you went through what the former
Keisha spent
right,
on, yeah.
What Keisha spent, and now this is all her underlings as well too. Now,
you're exactly right. And according to this story, there were only a handful of credit cards before Keisha Scarlett. But Keisha took the, what I think a very reasonable step in saying, hey, pretty much everybody that I hire should get their own credit card. Brad, what could possibly go wrong in that scenario?
So you mentioned a couple places. Top Golf, they were spending money at Top Golf?
Yeah. So let's see. Blythe Bernard says, Brad, now here's the thing. We shouldn't get too upset about this because they only spent $6,740 at Topgolf. So that's not, only $6,700.
Only $6,700 at Topgolf. John, I think you and I could go there every day for a couple years and not spend $6,700. You know what I'm saying?
We absolutely could. Now, Brad, what I love is that you give me a hard time, rightfully, about making movie recommendations to me, and I don't see them. But we could remedy that because St. Louis Public Schools spent $16,532 in Marcus Theaters.
Come on.
Marcus Theaters, Brad. Maybe you could get some. That buys a lot of snow caps. You know what I'm saying? You can see Wicked a few times with that money, Brad.
Snowcaps are one of my favorite. They're hard to find. So
they are hard to find.
$16,000 now at one theater, at a bunch of their theaters, right? This is total for the Marcus Theaters?
It would be a total of, so that would be the line item for Marcus Theaters. So the beauty of it is, Brad, that these employees, as it was shown in this report, were buying plane tickets, for example, for people that weren't employees but might just be friends or family of the employees. And of course, Brad didn't pay it back. Now, this piece points out that the one group that repaid a whole bunch of money was the Vashon high school basketball players. Blythe Bernard describes this by saying, the only clear-cut spending on students shown is a statement for the basketball team got to go to a tournament in Hawaii. And Brad, Vashon paid St. Louis Public Schools back out of their own money. Can you believe that? So Vashon picked up their own tab to go to a basketball tournament, but Keisha and friends are spending money at, oh, by the way, they're also a big fan of the Richmond Heights Schnooks. They spend a lot of money at the Richmond Heights Schnooks. You know, sometimes you got to pick up some collard greens. Sometimes you might need to pick up a little bit of soy milk. I don't know. I don't want to stereotype.
Okay.
Oh, and then also, Brad, let me interrupt. One more thing. The Hooters in Columbia, Missouri got $700 of taxpayer money, Brad. It's more than a mouthful.
The Hooters in Columbia?
Hooters in Columbia. Here's the thing. Maybe if you're driving. Oh, by the way, they enjoyed going to Margaritaville down at Lake of the Ozarks. You know, who doesn't want to stay there? The former Tantera. If you're going to Margaritaville, why don't you just swing by Hooters? You know?
How much at Margaritaville? Does it have
let me see. Dun 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 dun. A lot.
God.
Yeah. Oh, hotel rooms costing over $12,000 over 2 weeks in March and April. That includes the Stony Creek Inn in Columbia, Margaritaville in Osage Beach, and a Holiday Inn in South Carolina. And Brad, I can't possibly go through how many great items are in here, but I will call out that Blythe Bernard's bullet says thousands of dollars on plane tickets for family members of current and former staff. So you don't even have to currently work for St. Louis Public Schools to have somebody buy you a plane ticket, go somewhere for fun.
Now, okay, John, I see. Here's what's frustrating to me. Isn't this criminal? Isn't this?
It is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you bring up a great point, Brad, which is that State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick back in August launched an investigation. So when Fitzpatrick details all this beyond what's just come out, and I should point out too, Brad, that this is because of a sunshine request, a public records request from the Post-Dispatch. So they did a good job here. Brad, I don't know how you can be an administrator. Let's say this happened. Go into a school district, hire all your friends, even if you follow the letter of the law and only give them 49 grand instead of 50 grand or whatever. I don't see how you say, you know what? We're going to have 21 credit cards instead of 4 or 5, and we're going to run up the tab on them. And by the time it's time to pay, we'll probably be out of here anyway. Like, that's criminal, Brad.
Well, but of course they probably won't prosecute this or press charges. Do you think, or what?
I mean, I don't know, Brad.
Didn't you say?
I don't know how this happens. Like, when you look at the line items that Blythe Bernard has here, I don't know how you possibly justify spending money at Schnucks on groceries as anything but criminal.
Okay, but you said, now let me get this straight. You said that Vashon went to a basketball tournament, but the high school paid back?
Yeah, I'm guessing the Booster Club reimbursed St. Louis Public Schools.
That's what I was thinking. So in other words,
yeah, I'm guessing them. Yeah.
So I mean, it would if the high school paid the district back, it would be like taking money from one pocket to the other. But
for sure, yeah, absolutely. I'm guessing it's the Booster Club. I don't know for sure, and Blythe doesn't lay that out here.
God,
but Brad, this is a smorgasbord of Bubba Gump, which is also a great restaurant. You know, named after the Forrest Gump movie.
Right.
And, just fantastic.
Okay,
Brad.
now, one of the things you said in there, this gets unbelievable. Plane tickets for family members of foreign and former and current school relatives. So that means there's people who are still on staff that bought tickets for their family?
Yeah. So, well, here's the thing, Brad. Sometimes when you hit a little turbulence, it can be kind of scary. Like, you want someone to literally hold your hand when you're up there. Yeah. Along with and wives of board members too. We shouldn't forget. So the good thing that you could do, here's what I would do. And here's what I think was smart about their model. You got to include school board members in this. Because if school board members take a gift, then they're kind of in on the hustle. Like You've seen the movie Training Day. When Denzel got Ethan Hawke to smoke a little PCP cannabis, Suddenly Ethan Hawke is a co-conspirator and he can't narc on anybody, right? So if you give a board member a bunch of gifts, maybe give them a plane ticket for them and their family, then they're probably less likely to narc on you.
I've never seen Training Day, John, and you know what? No matter how many times you tell me to watch it, I'm not going to watch it. I'm sorry.
Let's go to Marcus Theater, Brad. You know what? For $16,000, we could probably pay a guy in the back room to give us a like kind of a private theater thing. I mean, I know that sounds a little glee. But anyway, Brad, this is just a fantastic story. What could possibly go wrong with giving all your friends their own credit card and saying, have at it?
Well, okay, here's another thing. And even to the point where they're in the city, and a lot of this was they're not even patronizing businesses in the city. If I'm not mistaken, there are no Marcus Theaters in the city of St. Louis anymore. I think they're all gone.
You got to go to Chesterfield for a civilized one, maybe to Pear.
Right, you got to go outside the city limits, literally outside the city limits.
There's no Top Golf at the corner corner Natural Bridge and Kings Highway. You got to go all the way out to Safetyville. But the good thing is maybe you could go out to Top Golf and you could go to the outlet stores and you could go to Sunglass Hut or Ralph Lauren.
Oh, man. Or maybe the Bill Blass store. Will we talk about that?
You could maybe go to Bill Blass store, yeah.
Okay, here's number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Number 2 features a story about a congressman, Brad, I think we've talked the least about since we've started the show. And that is Congressman Sam Graves. He represents that big swath of northern Missouri. Brad, you and I joke about the congressional districts a lot. You know, you got the 3rd congressional district, which looks like Pac-Man. That's what Mary Elizabeth Coleman called the Pac-Man district. The 6th district is the only district that actually kind of makes sense. It's just a band across northern Missouri. So think the far western part of the state all the way over to like Lincoln County. Sam Graves is a congressman. I believe he was first elected in 2000, so he's been there a long time. Brad, the steering committee in the U.S. House, which decides who gets to do what, who gets to run which committees, gave Sam Graves their blessing to remain as another term of the Transportation Committee. And the reason why this is noteworthy, other than Sam Graves being able to bring a whole bunch of money back to Missouri for transportation, is that under Republican rules, if you lead a House committee, you only have 3 terms in leadership. And Sam Graves spent a year as the ranking member and then 2 terms as chairman. Or, excuse me, 2 terms as ranking member and 1 term as chair. So the steering committee liked Sam Graves enough to give him a pass and say, okay, we're giving you a special waiver because one of the terms in leadership you were only ranking member, so you can run this big spending transportation committee again. This is great news for Missouri, Brad, especially when you think about bringing money back for I-70 and such. Sam Graves is not a flashy guy. He probably doesn't cut government spending as much as a lot of Missouri Republicans would want, but he's kind of in that Kit Bond role, ironically, of bringing money back to the state of Missouri.
Now, did you say Lincoln County is part of his district as well, too?
Yeah, he either has part or all of Lincoln County.
Really?
That's as far south as he goes.
Now, for those of you who've never been in northern Missouri, I used to do business. I used to run a business in Des Moines. And there's 3 ways you can drive to Des Moines from St. Louis. One is up 4061. You go up along Mississippi through Hannibal. The other one is north and 63 out of Columbia. And the way, well, actually there's 4 ways, but you can go up 35 from Kansas City, or you can actually go up 29 up into Council Bluffs, Iowa. But once you get about 50 miles north of Interstate 70 on all those, it's nothing. There's nothing there. It's farm territory. You know, I mean, it's just literally the city. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but probably the largest city in all of northern Missouri is Kirksville. Wouldn't that be about right?
Yeah, I think by far it would be, yeah.
And we're talking Kirksville is not a big city. And, you know, I think some people get sort of, you know, most people, you know, they drive the I-70 corridor. You got Jefferson City and Columbia, and you've got, you know, places like that. You go down 55, you've got Cape Girardeau and other places along, you know, Poplar Bluff. But, man, once you get north of I-70, there's not much up there. And, you know, I read something once again, I talked about this one time before. Do you know this crazy thing they're talking about, putting another interstate through Missouri, through northern Missouri? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I have heard about this. Yeah.
There's a highway, and supposedly it's sort of a cool highway that goes from Hannibal all the way to St. Joe, and I think it's called US 36. And
That's right.
What they're talking about doing is taking Interstate 72, which comes into the Quincy, Hannibal area, and essentially bring it up to interstate standards and having another interstate, cross-country interstate, I guess that would probably be, 100 miles north of I-70? It'd be like a parallel to Interstate 70?
Yeah, probably, yeah, directly across.
Interesting. Okay, last but not least.
The number one.
Your friend, Brad, Mark McCloskey, made national news yesterday. Speaking of the devil, it turns out that Mark McCloskey, and by the way, we should point out, this piece is brought to us by Politico. The Sam Graves piece was brought to us by Politico, Brad, the venerated Washington, D.C. publication. I should have pointed that out. Also, Mark McCloskey made Politico yesterday, Brad. Mark McCloskey, get this, says he is interested in a position with the Trump administration, particularly working on Doge with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Can you believe that, Brad?
John, I was going to ask you about this because of the fact that, first off, I thought it was because of the fact of John's excellent thumbnail work on some of the videos we put up on bjshow.video. But there's a pattern that if you look at our, the views on our podcast on bjshow.video, which is essentially YouTube, that we have, X amount of people normally. Well, all of a sudden yesterday I looked at that and I go, whoa, what happened to this thing with Mark McCloskey? It's like, what is it? It's like way up there even today. Is this where this came from, our conversation yesterday?
Yeah, apparently Mark McCloskey was on a local St. Louis radio station, and a guy had some meaningless boomer talk with him for a while, and then called him back eventually, and then asked him, hey, what do you want to do, actually, if in the Trump administration? And I guess McCloskey said he would like to be appointed to Doge. He would do it with great relish. So Politico picked it up and linked to whatever this local radio station is in St. Louis.
That's us, John.
Are you serious?
It's us, John. It's us. Now, okay, explain to me, John, once again, let me preface this by saying my old friend and former business associate, I was a business associate, I became a friend, is Randy Bluestone. His wife and Mark Cummer still run the Country Club car washes out in St. Charles County. They've got one down in Chesterfield. And Randy was a tough guy to deal with. I mean, he was an interesting, excellent business person, and he constantly gave you S. And one day I said something to him about that, and he said to me in so many words, I can't remember his exact words, the closer you are to someone with friendship, the more S you can give them. So John gives me lots of S, so I consider
I do.
We're
Brad.
good close friends. But what was the comment about Mark McCloskey and I, boomer talk? What was boomer talk? Explain that.
Oh, it's like if you call somebody, so here's a great example. If a guy would leave a voicemail for another guy, and then another guy, boomer number 2, calls boomer number 1 back. And then boomer number 1 calls boomer number 2 without any plan of what to talk to. But, they're boomers. And even though they're in the sunset in their life, they have no urgency in their life. So they just call and chat about absolutely nothing. And then maybe boomer number 1 hangs up and a Gen X guy says, hey, maybe we should take the opportunity to ask something interesting that people actually want to hear. And then boomer number 1 calls boomer number 2 back and they actually get a Politico story out of it. I don't know. I'm spitballing. I'm just making that up as we go along.
Okay, John. In the next segment, there's a name that's in the news that you're not going to believe this name. And once again, I will give the initials of one of the two people working on the story, SF. And I will say, I come right out and say, I don't want to sound like I'm dissing on KWMU all the time, but they've got 34 people on their news staff.
I bet I know who this is. She has a sweet melodic voice, and you're going to break her heart in segment B.
Well, maybe that's who it is. Okay, but why is it that the Post-Dispatch is doing, once again, I think it's great, doing all this investigative reporting we had in segment number 3 about the credit card usage? How come all the reporters for the St. Louis Public Radio, how come they aren't filing Freedom of Information Act? How come they aren't digging up these kind of stories? John, explain that to me, can you?
Yeah, I think that here's the thing. They see an opportunity in stories about black breastfeeding and maybe some stories about how the queer community has influenced Shakespeare in the Park. And they know if the Post-Dispatch is focused on, public spending stories, nobody is going to be covering handicapped actors in Forest Park.
Okay, John. That totally
I
explains.
mean, have a little respect for diversity, Brad.
I'm sorry, John. You're right. I have no respect for diversity.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T. John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?